What's up, YouTube? Today's build is kind of like a little messed up, so I've been like trying to fix it a little bit, and it turns out that Necromancer has some issues with self-cast compared to Ascendant. Mainly, my tree is pretty bad right now, and I'm gonna go over my gear. I'm gonna showcase some footage of the build and what it's actually like. Like, the build honestly feels pretty good to play with Spark. But the main problem with the build is that single target is an issue, but I think I'm being too harsh on myself, and I'm not trying to do like Shaper and stuff like that at too low of a level. I mean, you can only expect so much from a build early on, especially at level 83. Since we're a Necromancer, every single passive point matters a lot because we don't get the free passive points from Ascendant, and our start is also really bad. So normally for Necromancer versus Scion, you would not need a path through these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points, and then you also gain like 4 ascendancy points just from playing Scion. So it's like a 9 passive point swing, so being low level is really bad. But after playing it a little bit, I do think the damage is there if you're high level enough, so you should be level 90 or so. But another thing that I've realized is that playing Stormbrand instead of self-cast Spark is probably going to be the solution. Spark is very enjoyable to play though, and is very good on some maps, but the damage is honestly not there at T16 plus maps and trying to do invitations, but it's hard to say if you should even be doing invitations at level 83. But I think if you wanted to play self-cast Spark, you can play it. I'll showcase some gear and and how the build plays out in high level maps. So this is the gear I'm currently using. I'm using 2 Nebuluses because the damage was honestly not enough with wands. So let's see, where are my old wands? So I have my old wands and my weapon swap. So for the wands, so these are the wands. I pretty much just threw an essence on it, and this is just projectile speed. So I just put some projectile speed essence on it, and I just got this. So generally you want multi probably. You want some projectile speed, you want some crit chance for spells, you want spell damage, and then you want a suffix to craft on trigger socketed spells. And then I have another one here, so I really use really budget stuff. So the stuff you'll see in the video showcase in mapping is using these 2 wands. But after a while, I realized that wands just ain't gonna cut it in the long run. Like, the projectile speed is really nice, but the damage from Nebulous is just too great to not take. So if you see here, I think the Spark tooltip is 20,673, and well, we need to turn on Purity of Lightning and Purity of Ice. So if we swatch the Nebulous already, it's 39,000. So that should tell you all you need to know whether Nebulous is better or wands are better, because Spark is a skill that does not carry a build. Spark gets carried by the build. Now what I mean by this is Spark is not a mechanically great skill for low budget, and that the single target is actually really bad. So this is the difference between using Spark, Nebulous, and an imbued wand. And what's even crazier is if you look at my resist, it's only 81% versus 83%, and it's already nearly double. So what happens when the resist is 90%? Because we get enough max res from getting first amount of replenishings. What that means is that Nebulous is going to blow the wand out of the water. So even if you have the trigger socketed spells so that you can get like Plague Bringer or something like that, or Corpse Pact, is not going to be worth it. I would probably manually cash Flesh Offering every now and then, and it would probably feel better. And this is not even to include that this spells have a 10% chance to deal double damage. Is not even included in this tooltip. So you can get a lot more damage on the Nebulous. Now this Nebulous is probably way too good, and I just had it in my inventory, so I just used it. This one's a little bit more reasonable, but it's still pretty good. So in the long run, you have to use the Nebulous or the damage will just not be there. The projectile speed is really nice to play with, and it will be what you want to use if you want to level with Spark. And you could probably get to like level low 90s with the Spark build with wands, and you'll see in the showcase that the mapping speed is actually very fast. So we're using an Alpha's Howl of an enchant. This usually goes for around like 50 chaos, 60 chaos. Now the reason we want to use Malevolence enchant is because we want to reserve Malevolence permanently. So reserving Malevolence permanently means that our Hatred, Wrath, Haste, and Zealotry auras on our March of the Legion boots gain the duration from the Malevolence. And whatever you do not want to get the aura enchant one of the 50% auras that we put on the boots, because it doesn't matter if one of these auras costs less to reserve, right? Because we're using March of the Legion boots. So basically, with Malevolence and only one first among equals currently, right now we already have 28-second duration. So we only need to turn these auras on, once every 28 seconds. And once we get more first among equals, so eventually we'll probably get so if you're playing aura stack, you'll probably get 5 more of these clusters, right? So if you get 5 more of these clusters, I think the auras will probably last 40 plus seconds long. So it'll just be a very enjoyable playstyle, and you will barely even have to turn on the auras that much. So now we're using this amulet. I pretty much just use it. I found it in my stash. It's a Champion of the Cause Life amulet with some fire res and strength. So what we want to do for this amulet is we pretty much want life and reservation of skills, but I was unable to get a Redeemer amulet, and I didn't really want to buy it because there's none really up because no one's really playing the league anymore. But ideally you want reservation, and then you want Champion of the Cause, and life or ES is a bonus on top. And if you're able to get the extra reservation, it means we can probably run Purity of Fire too, because right now I actually don't have enough mana reservation to run Purity of Fire. So for the rings, I'm using Trinity because I think Trinity is actually a pretty good support gem. So with the Trinity support gem, we only use one Call of the Brotherhood. Using one Call of the Brotherhood means that half our damage is lightning and half our damage is cold. So we have Anomalous Spark. I was using So I have a 20-20 and 21-21. So if you don't use Anomalous Spark, you have to use the Pierce gem. So if you use a regular Spark, you do gain a lot of projectile speed. 43% projectile speed is no joke. But what this means is you probably lose the pen, so we don't have elemental pen anymore. And without penetration, bossing is going to feel terrible. So the big compromise is to just use Anomalous Spark and then use an elemental penetration gem instead of Pierce. And 2 Pierce should be enough to feel somewhat good. So that's the downside of this build, is the fact that if you use March of the Legion boots, you can't use Shaper boots for the easy 5 Pierce if you killed recently. And now for the ring, I'm using Trigger level 8 Assassin's Mark where you hit a rare or unique enemy. So this is actually pretty good for damage. I don't know if there's actually a Sniper's Mark ring. I don't think so. It's only Poacher's Mark. So this ring just helps me get some power charges while mapping, but you can also get a lot of different things. You can get some resist if you're missing some. But I think getting a curse on the ring is the best option. But you could also get a Shadows and Dust of Ellie weakness, but that's very expensive, I think. So for the gloves, I'm using Shadows and Dust, and this is just because I like playing with Rampage, and multi is always nice in the crit chance. But if you don't want to use Shadows and Dust and you want to be a little tankier, you can use a Life and ES pair of gloves with Culling Strike or something, or any of the damage mods for gloves. And now for the belt, I'm just using a generic Life and Chaos Res. Now, eventually, you don't even need resist on your gear, right? Because you're running Purity of Lightning, Purity of Ice, and Purity of Fire. So you'll pretty much be fully capped on resist just from turning on the auras. So you can see here, if I turned on Purity of Fire right here, I would have 81, I'll be capped already because it would give me that much resist. And the resist will only get higher and higher. So once you get more reservation of skills, the gearing becomes a lot easier, because you don't need to worry about any of these resists on the gear. So you can pretty much just get a Life and Chaos Res and Life and Chaos Res ring. And then we have the March of the Legion boots. I think you want pen on the boots as the enchant if you haven't killed recently, because penetration is actually a pretty big problem for this build since we're using Trinity. Because Trinity only penetrates 20%, while regular Awakened Cold pen penetrates 40%. So we want to try to find ways to get generic penetration so you can get that on a Watcher's Eye with a Zealotry. So that's pretty much it for the gear. Now for the tree, I've done something very bad. I've just gone over here too much. So ideally you want to go here. You want to put intuitive leap, so it's pretty much just going to be the aura stacker tree. You would drop all these points, and all these points would go into cluster jewels, and then it would go into this cluster jewel. So as you transition, you'll become more and more like a full out aura stacker. So this build in the end will just be a full aura stacker, and it's just the only way to play Spark, because Spark really needs auras in order to do damage. If you look at the other ascendancies, Spark only does damage on Ascendant, and I think Necromancer actually does more damage. But if you're not doing and fully committing to auras, you're missing out on so many more multipliers that multiply upon one another. So it's really important to get 300% aura effectiveness as soon as possible, and that's when the build will feel a lot better. And yeah, using this trigger wand stuff is a bait, I think, in the long term. You want to transition to Nebulous, and you can just manually cast Flesh Offering, and the Flesh Offering will last super long because of your, what's it called? Because of your duration in the build. Now, there's another thing that I was trying out, if this could actually work, is finding a way to use Malachai's Artifice to get EE. So if there's a fire skill that could be procced, I know some people use golems, but if I put in a flame golem, unfortunately the flame golem gains damage for, so when it does the EE, it will do, what's it called, like it has fire and cold damage on it, so that's pretty unfortunate. So if I bring out the flame golem, it will do fire and cold damage, or will it? So I'm not really sure what happens because I'm running Wrath. So if someone could help me out, or if someone could find a way to use this ring, I think this could actually solve our single target issue a lot in a lot sooner manner than having to go full out on the aura stacker. So the damage has a huge ceiling, right? It's only level 83. It's only going to get better and better. So I'll update you tomorrow with how it goes, but I have killed Shaper with it, and I do think the damage is there for the late game. You just need to wait a little bit, get all of the medium clusters. So do have to farm a bit of currency to afford the setup, but sooner or later, once you get the clusters and you get the full aura stacker setup, it'll be fine. But that just comes down to how much will the build actually cost, and it's probably gonna be cheaper than the regular aura stacker. And the big thing is you can play the build and it will be fine. Like this build is perfectly playable in like T16 maps, T15 maps, and you won't die that much. Its only big problem is doing like invitations and guardians and like super tanky stuff, but once you get the higher level, I think it'll be fine. And once I fix my tree, so I'll update everyone with the progress. I'll show some footage of the build and it in action today. And I do think the clear speed is really nice. It's honestly was a joy to play. And I know like nowadays self-cast is kind of frowned upon. And it's really hard to play self-cast, right? Everyone just wants to play Brand and Spell Slingers. And this is probably one of the few ways to play self-cast. And then other ways are just exploiting like gem levels and more multipliers. But yeah, hope you enjoy the clips, and hope people actually try out this build if you want to play a Necromancer. I mean, even if this build is not the best in the world, Witch is an extremely versatile class, and it has a lot of the best builds in the game attached to it.
I'm alone, I'm a broken home. I gave you all the bricks that I own and know. I'm letting go, I'm breaking these walls down, breaking these walls down. If you want adventure, then fly to home. But if you wanna travel, then go alone. Yeah, what's the point in us if I never know? Yeah, if you're gonna leave, I'ma let you go. I'm tired of the pain. Go away. I'm tired of yesterday. I fell, where my demons dwell. My own little nightmare, I call it hell. Oh well, it's time to get back up, climbing and climbing. I'm done with this ride, is what I tell myself, so I could feel something else. Yeah, I guess I had my bad days, but it doesn't mean I lost my style. Darling, where were you when my heart was on the ground? I thought time would prove that you would stick around. I guess time stood still, a king without his crown. Now I'm breaking and you're faking, girl. You never made a sound. I'm tired of the pain. Go away. I'm tired of I'm on my own, broken and alone. I feel the rain crashing down all around this empty town. I'm searching for the lost and found, but you don't care, you're unaware. Keep moving like the scars aren't even there. It's in the air like a blazing flare. Don't stare 'cause the flames will burn us. I thought you were the one for me. That's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas. Oh, you meant the world to me. I used to kiss your head when you cried for me. Hold your hand while the pain was over. Keep you warm by the roaring sea. You meant the world to me. Like shadows in the atmosphere, charting the stratosphere. Yeah. I prayed for you and kept you near, in hopes you'd chase away my fears. I'm on my own, you made it so, and now I'm chasing nightmares. I used to run with you through the great big leaves, laugh at you when you.
Oh yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed the clips. So you can see that the wand build is pretty nice. Playing with that much projectile speed with Spark is like insanely good quality of life. So while I was making a video, right, because I kind of record these in like different segments, I tried out using this flame golem thing, and it turns out that I answered my own question, and flame golem actually does not benefit from hatred or wrath. So if you look at it, I put the golem out, bam, vulnerable to cold and lightning. So we pretty much fixed the build. So any single target issues, if you use the Malachai's ring, we gain 50% resist or 50% pen. And right now I also have can't run Purity of Fire. So we don't need to run Purity of Fire, and we still have a lot of resist because we put a red gem in. So everything's fixed. I can't wait to try this build out tomorrow now that I have 50% pen that I figured out for free. So yeah, if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and subscribe. Tomorrow I'll be trying to fix this ore stacker. Once I get 90% all res, it'll be a lot better. It's kind of weird, right? I have 7 to 800k tooltip on Spark, but it doesn't feel the same as the ore stacker on Ascendant. So I'm not really sure what the big deal is, but I honestly believe it just depends. So hopefully this flame golem trick actually fixes the issues. But the build is a blast to play. I had a really fun time playing it in maps, even if it was struggling on a single target. But I just have to keep in mind the character's level 83 and it will get a lot better. But thanks for watching, everyone, and I hope you find more mirrors and exalts than I do, and see ya next time.